The steam rose from the coffee pot in lazy spirals, carrying with it the bitter aroma that had become as essential to Staff Sergeant Maya Chun's morning routine as checking her rifle's zero or reviewing weather reports. She stood in the cramped kitchen of Forward Operating Base Whiskey, her back to the common area where voices drifted in subdued conversations about patrol routes and supply drops. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar rhythm, a sound that had replaced alarm clocks and reveille calls in this forgotten corner of the Afghan mountains. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's fingers traced the rim of her ceramic mug, a chipped piece of home that had survived 3 deployments and countless moves between bases. The mug bore the faded logo of a coffee shop from her hometown in Oregon, a place that felt more like a dream than a memory after 18 months in country. She preferred the quiet of early morning hours when the base settled into the brief lull between night watch rotations and the chaos of daytime operations. Through the small window above the sink, she could see the mountains rising like jagged teeth against the predawn sky. The landscape held a stark beauty that photographers tried to capture, but never quite managed to convey. There was something about the way light moved across those peaks that cameras couldn't translate, something that required human eyes to truly understand. Maya had learned to read those mountains like text, understanding how shadows revealed hidden valleys and how wind patterns betrayed the presence of movement miles away. The radio mounted on the wall crackled once, then fell silent. Maya didn't look up from her coffee preparation. Base communications ran constantly, a steady stream of routine traffic that created white noise for anyone who spent enough time around the equipment. Check-ins from patrol units, supply coordination, weather updates, medical requests. The rhythm of military life reduced to electronic chatter that most people learn to filter out. But Maya's training had taught her to listen with different ears. 3 years as a designated marksman had honed her ability to detect patterns within apparent randomness, to identify the one voice that didn't belong among the familiar ones, the one transmission that carried urgency beneath its professional calm. She poured hot water through the coffee grounds with methodical precision, watching the dark liquid collect in the pot below. Behind her, Corporal James Rodriguez sprawled across one of the mismatched chairs that someone had salvaged from various sources around the base. His boots were propped on a wooden crate that served as a footrest, and he was reading a paperback novel with a cover so worn that the title had faded to illegibility. Rodriguez had been her spotter for 8 months, long enough to develop the kind of wordless communication that made them effective as a team, but not long enough to fully understand why Maya spent so much time in voluntary isolation. "Coffee ready yet?" Rodriguez asked without looking up from his book. His voice carried the casual tone of someone who had asked the same question at the same time every morning for weeks. "Almost," Maya replied, her attention divided between the brewing process and the ambient sounds of the base waking up around them. Generators hummed in the distance. Someone was running a diagnostic check on one of the vehicles in the motor pool. A helicopter passed overhead, its rotors beating a steady rhythm that gradually faded as it continued toward its destination. The radio crackled again, longer this time, followed by a burst of static that resolved into a voice Maya didn't immediately recognize. "Base operations, this is Overwatch 7. Request immediate conference with designated marksman assets. Priority Alpha." Maya's hand stopped halfway to the coffee pot. Priority Alpha meant imminent threat, life or death situations that required immediate response. But more significant was the call sign. Overwatch 7 belonged to Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, the regional intelligence coordinator, who operated from a classified location somewhere in the theater. Martinez didn't make direct contact with forward operating bases unless something had gone seriously wrong. Rodriguez noticed Maya's stillness and glanced up from his book. "That for?" U.S. Before Maya could respond, the radio crackled again. This time, the voice was clearer, more direct, cutting through the static with unmistakable authority. "Ghost Sniper, you're needed." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Ghost Sniper wasn't Maya's official call sign. It was something that had emerged from field reports and after-action reviews, a designation that referenced her ability to eliminate targets at extreme range without revealing her position. The name had spread through unofficial channels, whispered in briefing rooms and intelligence summaries, but it had never been used over open radio frequencies. Maya set down her coffee mug and moved toward the radio with deliberate calm. She lifted the handset from its cradle and keyed the transmission button. "Overwatch 7. This is Ghost Sniper. Authentication required for priority alpha traffic." The response came immediately, carrying authentication codes that verified the legitimacy of the communication. Martinez's voice followed, crisp and professional, but carrying an undertone that suggested the situation was more complex than routine emergency response. "Ghost Sniper, we have a developing situation requiring your specific skill set. Extraction. Team en route to your location. Estimated arrival 15 minutes. Prepare for immediate deployment." Maya acknowledged the transmission and replaced the handset, her mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had kept her alive through dozens of high-risk operations. Immediate deployment meant no time for detailed briefings or careful preparation. Whatever had triggered this call was happening now, requiring rapid response with minimal information. Rodriguez had closed his book and was watching her with the heightened attention that came from months of working together in dangerous situations. "We moving?" "Pack light and fast," Maya said, already heading toward the door. "Full kit, but travel configuration. Something's happening that requires immediate response." The coffee continued brewing behind them, its familiar aroma filling the empty kitchen as Maya and Rodriguez moved through the base toward their equipment lockers. The morning routine that had begun with simple domestic comfort had transformed into operational urgency within minutes, but Maya felt no surprise at the transition. Military life had taught her to expect the unexpected, to maintain readiness even during moments of apparent calm. Maya's equipment locker stood in the armory building, a reinforced concrete structure that housed the more sensitive weapons and gear used by specialized personnel. Her rifle case occupied a position near the back wall, secured with multiple locks that reflected both the weapon's value and the classification level of her missions. The rifle itself was a custom-modified system that had been tailored to her specific requirements over months of field use and constant adjustment. As she worked through the familiar routine of equipment preparation, Maya's reputation within the military community seemed at odds with her current environment. Forward Operating Base Whiskey was considered a secondary assignment, a place where careers went to stagnate rather than advance. The base supported routine patrol operations and provided logistical coordination for larger units operating in more active sectors. For most personnel stationed there, it represented either a punishment assignment or a quiet posting before retirement. Maya's presence at such a remote location had been the subject of considerable speculation among the base personnel. Her service record included deployments to some of the most dangerous areas of operation, successful completion of advanced sniper training, and commendations for actions that remained classified. Yet she had requested assignment to Forward Operating Base Whiskey specifically, choosing isolation over the career advancement opportunities available at larger installations. The reason for her choice was complex and personal, rooted in an incident that had occurred during her previous deployment. Maya had been part of a joint operation targeting high-value individuals in an urban environment when intelligence failures had led to civilian casualties. The mission had been declared successful by official standards, but Maya had struggled with questions about the accuracy of the targeting information and the decision-making process that had led to the engagement. Her request for assignment to a quieter sector had been granted without question, but it had also resulted in a subtle shift in how others perceived her capabilities. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Some colleagues interpreted her choice as evidence of combat fatigue or loss of confidence. Others assumed she was seeking an easy assignment where she could coast through the remainder of her enlistment without facing challenging situations. The reality was more nuanced. Maya had come to Forward Operating Base Whiskey to rebuild her confidence in her own judgment and to develop a deeper understanding of how intelligence analysis affected operational decisions. The remote location provided opportunities for independent thinking and careful observation without the pressure of constant supervision or the influence of group dynamics that could skew individual assessment. Over the months since her arrival, Maya had established routines that emphasized solitary work and careful documentation. She maintained detailed logs of environmental conditions, weapon performance, and target analysis that went far beyond standard requirements. Her shooting practice sessions were conducted alone, often in the early morning hours when the range was empty and she could focus entirely on technique refinement. The other personnel at the base had initially tried to include Maya in their social activities and informal gatherings, but her preference for solitude had gradually created distance between her and her colleagues. The separation wasn't hostile or dramatic, but it was noticeable. Maya ate meals alone more often than not, spent her off-duty time reading or maintaining equipment, and volunteered for assignments that kept her away from the main base operations. Sergeant First Class David Kim, the base's senior non-commissioned officer, had tried several times to draw Maya into more collaborative activities. Kim was a veteran of multiple deployments who understood the value of unit cohesion and mutual support in maintaining morale during long assignments. His attempts to integrate Maya into the base's social structure were well-intentioned, but ultimately unsuccessful. Chun's got some kind of complex about being better than the rest of us, Kim had mentioned to other senior personnel during one of their informal leadership meetings. The comment wasn't malicious, but it reflected a growing perception that Maya's isolation stemmed from arrogance rather than personal preference or professional focus. The perception had been reinforced by Maya's performance during training exercises and qualification shoots. Her scores consistently exceeded standard requirements by significant margins, and her ability to engage targets at extreme range had become something of a legend among the base personnel. But rather than inspiring admiration, her superior performance had created resentment among some of her colleagues, who interpreted her success as an implicit criticism of their own abilities. Rodriguez, as Maya's assigned spotter, had the closest professional relationship with her among the base personnel. Their partnership required constant communication and mutual trust, creating a working dynamic that transcended the social barriers Maya had established with others. But even Rodriguez found Maya's dedication to solitary practice and independent analysis somewhat puzzling. "You know you don't have to prove anything to anyone here, right?" Rodriguez had asked during one of their training sessions. The comment was meant as friendly advice, but it revealed his assumption that Maya's behavior was driven by insecurity or competitiveness rather than genuine professional development. Maya's response had been characteristically direct. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to understand how to make better decisions under pressure." The answer had satisfied Rodriguez in the moment, but it hadn't addressed the underlying perception that Maya's methods were unnecessary or excessive for their current assignment. The truth was that Maya's approach to her duties had been shaped by her previous experience with intelligence failures and targeting errors. She had seen how small mistakes in analysis or preparation could lead to catastrophic results, and she was determined to develop skills that would prevent similar failures in the future. Her isolation wasn't about superiority or competition. It was about creating space for the kind of careful thinking that she believed was essential for responsible use of lethal force. But perceptions within the military community were often more powerful than reality, and Maya's reputation had begun to reflect the assumptions others made about her motivations rather than her actual goals. Some personnel viewed her as a perfectionist who couldn't accept normal standards of performance. Others saw her as someone who had lost confidence in her abilities and was overcompensating through excessive preparation. The most damaging perception was that Maya had become risk-averse, seeking assignments that would minimize her exposure to dangerous situations. This interpretation of her career choices had begun to appear in informal evaluations and professional discussions, creating a narrative that portrayed her as someone whose nerve had been compromised by combat stress. Colonel Patricia Harrison, the base commander, had reviewed Maya's personnel file multiple times since her arrival at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. Harrison was a competent administrator who had built her career through careful attention to personnel management and operational efficiency. She recognized Maya's technical skills and professional competence, but she also noted the pattern of social isolation and the apparent lack of ambition that had brought Maya to such a remote assignment. Shun is technically proficient but lacks the leadership initiative we typically expect from personnel at her experience level, Harrison had written in one of Maya's periodic evaluations. The assessment was accurate in its observation of Maya's behavior, but it failed to recognize the deliberate nature of her choices or the long-term professional development goals that motivated her current approach. The evaluation had been filed in Maya's personnel record, becoming part of the official documentation that would influence future assignment decisions and promotion opportunities. In the military system, such assessments carried significant weight, creating momentum that could shape an entire career trajectory based on subjective interpretations of behavior and motivation. Maya was aware of how others perceived her choices, but she had decided that rebuilding her confidence and developing better analytical skills was more important than maintaining appearances or pursuing immediate career advancement. The decision required accepting short-term professional costs in exchange for long-term development that she believed would make her more effective in critical situations. The equipment preparation that followed Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's radio call represented the first test of whether Maya's approach to professional development had achieved its intended goals. The urgency of the situation and the specific request for her skills suggested that someone in the intelligence community still recognized her capabilities despite the perceptions that had developed at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. As Maya secured her rifle case and gathered the additional equipment required for immediate deployment, she felt a familiar combination of anxiety and focus that preceded high-stakes operations. The anxiety stemmed from uncertainty about the mission parameters and the pressure of performing under the scrutiny of senior leadership. The focus came from months of preparation and the confidence that she had developed through careful practice and analysis. Rodriguez worked efficiently beside her, checking communication equipment and organizing the gear they would need for extended operations away from base support. His movements reflected the professional competence that had made him an effective spotter, but Maya could sense his curiosity about the nature of their sudden deployment and the unusual request that had initiated their call to action. "Any idea what this is about?" Rodriguez asked as he secured the last of their shared equipment. Maya shook her head, but her mind was already analyzing the limited information available from Martinez's radio transmission. Priority Alpha designation meant imminent threat to life, but the specific request for Ghost Sniper suggested a situation that required precision engagement rather than general sniper support. The authentication codes had been current and properly formatted, indicating that the request had originated from legitimate command authority. More intriguingly, Martinez had bypassed normal chain of command protocols by contacting Maya directly, rather than routing the request through base operations and Colonel Harrison. Such deviation from standard procedure suggested either extreme urgency or a level of classification that required compartmentalized communication. Either possibility indicated that the situation was more complex than routine tactical support. The sound of helicopter rotors approaching from the south interrupted Maya's analysis and signaled the arrival of their extraction transportation. The timing matched Martinez's estimate, confirming the operational efficiency that characterized high-priority missions. Maya and Rodriguez gathered their equipment and headed toward the landing zone, leaving behind the quiet routine of forward operating base whiskey for whatever challenges awaited them in the field. As they walked across the base compound, Maya noticed several personnel watching their departure with expressions that ranged from curiosity to something that might have been envy. The attention wasn't unusual. High-priority extractions were rare at the base and naturally attracted interest. But Maya sensed that some of the observers were reassessing their previous judgments about her capabilities and career trajectory. The helicopter that landed at the base was a modified transport aircraft equipped with communication systems and defensive measures that indicated its use for sensitive operations. The crew wore no unit insignia or identifying markers, a standard security protocol for classified missions. Maya and Rodriguez loaded their equipment and took positions in the cargo compartment as the aircraft lifted off and turned toward an undisclosed destination. Through the small windows of the helicopter, Maya watched forward operating base whiskey recede into the mountainous landscape below. The base had been her home for 8 months, a place where she had rebuilt her confidence and developed new approaches to her professional responsibilities. Now she was leaving that environment to face a situation that would test whether her preparation had been adequate for real-world application. The flight would take them to whatever crisis had prompted Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's urgent request for ghost sniper services. Maya settled into her seat and began the mental preparation that would help her transition from the careful analysis of training and practice to the split-second decision-making required in actual operations. The coffee she had been making that morning seemed like a memory from a different life, replaced by the immediate demands of a mission that could validate or undermine everything she had worked to achieve during her time in isolation. The helicopter touched down at Firebase Delta as the sun reached its zenith, casting harsh shadows across the desert compound that seemed to absorb all moisture from the air. Maya stepped onto the landing pad with her equipment bag slung across her shoulder, immediately feeling the temperature difference between the mountain base she had left and this lower elevation position. The heat rose in visible waves from the concrete, distorting the outlines of buildings and creating a shimmering effect that would complicate any precision shooting requirements. Firebase Delta operated as a regional coordination center, housing intelligence analysis units and communication facilities that supported operations across a wide geographical area. Unlike the modest scale of forward operating base whiskey, Delta buzzed with constant activity. Personnel moved between buildings with purposeful urgency. Vehicles arrived and departed at regular intervals, and the communication towers bristled with equipment that suggested connections to command structures far beyond the immediate theater of operations. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez emerged from the main operations building as Maya and Rodriguez gathered their gear. Martinez was a compact woman in her early 40s whose silver hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. Her uniform was crisp despite the heat, and she carried herself with the confident bearing that came from years of managing complex intelligence operations under pressure. "Ghost Sniper," Martinez said, extending her hand as Maya approached. The greeting was formal but carried undertones of professional respect that suggested Martinez was familiar with Maya's capabilities beyond the Wanda reputation that had developed at her previous assignment. "Thank you for responding quickly. We have a situation that requires your specific skill set." Maya shook Martinez's hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact that characterized military leaders who were comfortable with their authority. "Ma'am, what's the nature of the target?" Martinez gestured toward the operations building, indicating that the briefing would take place inside where communication could remain secure from potential monitoring. "It's not a target," she said as they walked. "It's a rescue." The operations center occupied most of the main building's ground floor, filled with workstations, communication equipment, and large display screens that showed maps, satellite imagery, and real-time intelligence feeds. The environment hummed with electronic activity and subdued conversations as analysts processed information from multiple sources. Maya recognized the atmosphere of an active intelligence center where critical decisions were made based on constantly changing data. Major Thomas Bradford, the operations officer, joined them at a secure briefing table equipped with classified computer terminals and communication systems. Bradford was a tall man with prematurely gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who had spent too many years managing crisis situations. His introduction was brief and professional, focused on operational requirements rather than social pleasantries. 48 hours ago, we lost contact with a 4-person reconnaissance team operating in the Kandahar province. Bradford began, activating a wall display that showed topographical maps of the target area. The team was conducting surveillance on suspected weapon storage facilities when they encountered unexpected resistance and were forced to take defensive positions in hostile territory. Maya studied the map, noting the terrain features and the distance from Firebase Delta to the team's last known position. The area was mountainous with limited access routes, characteristics that would complicate both the team's ability to escape and any rescue attempts. More concerning was the distance from friendly forces and the time that had elapsed since the last communication. "What's their current status?" Maya asked, her mind already analyzing the tactical challenges involved in reaching isolated personnel. "In enemy-controlled territory." Martinez took over the briefing, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone delivering information that had been carefully verified. "We received a brief transmission 6 hours ago indicating that the team leader, Captain Jennifer Walsh, had been wounded but was still operational. The team has established a defensive position in a cave complex approximately 2 kilometers from their original observation point." Bradford manipulated the display to show satellite imagery of the cave area, revealing rocky terrain that provided natural concealment, but also limited options for movement or extraction. "The problem is that enemy forces have surrounded their position and are conducting systematic searches to locate them. We estimate at least 20 hostiles in the immediate area, with additional reinforcements arriving from nearby settlements." Maya examined the imagery more closely, identifying potential fields of fire and concealment positions that might support a rescue operation. The terrain was challenging, but not impossible for a skilled marksman who could establish overwatch positions at extended range. "What's the extraction plan?" "That's where you come in," Martinez said. "The terrain makes helicopter extraction impossible under current conditions. The enemy has shoulder-fired anti-aircraft weapons and has already engaged one of our reconnaissance drones. Any rescue attempt will require ground movement through hostile territory." Bradford highlighted several locations on the map that represented possible approach routes to the team's position. "We're organizing a ground rescue force, but they'll need overwatch support to clear the path and neutralize threats that could compromise the operation. The distances involved require someone capable of precision engagement at extreme range." Maya understood the tactical requirements, but she also recognized the complexity of the mission and the risks involved for all personnel. "What's the timeline for the rescue operation?" 6 hours, Martinez replied. "After that, the team's defensive position becomes untenable, and the likelihood of successful extraction drops significantly. We need to move fast, but we also need to move smart." The briefing continued with detailed analysis of enemy positions, weather conditions, and communication protocols that would coordinate the rescue operation. Maya absorbed the information while mentally calculating ranges, wind factors, and positioning requirements that would allow her to provide effective overwatch support. The mission parameters were within her capabilities, but they would require careful preparation and precise execution. Rodriguez, who had been listening to the briefing without comment, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, what's the backup plan if the primary rescue fails?" Martinez's expression remained neutral, but Maya caught a slight tightening around her eyes that suggested the question had touched on something she preferred not to discuss. "The backup plan is to ensure the primary rescue succeeds." The answer was diplomatically phrased, but Maya understood its implications. The reconnaissance team was operating in territory where capture would result in torture and execution, making rescue the only viable option. Failure would mean abandoning 4 personnel to a fate that no military organization could accept, creating political and morale consequences that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Bradford began outlining the specific role Maya would play in the rescue operation, identifying overwatch positions and engagement zones that would provide maximum coverage for the ground rescue force. The plan was complex but feasible, requiring coordination between multiple elements and precise timing to avoid fratricidal incidents. As the briefing concluded, Maya realized that her months of isolated practice and careful analysis if forward. Operating Base Whiskey had been preparation for exactly this type of mission. The skills she had developed through solitary training and the confidence she had, rebuilt through methodical preparation, would be tested under conditions that could determine whether 4 people lived or died. But there was something about the mission that troubled Maya, something beyond the obvious tactical challenges and risks. The urgency of the situation and the specific request for her capabilities suggested that this rescue operation was more complex than a routine extraction of personnel in trouble. The involvement of Lieutenant Colonel Martinez and the resources being committed to the mission indicated that the reconnaissance team had been working on something significant. Maya requested time to review the mission materials privately and prepare her equipment for the specific requirements of the operation. Martinez granted the request and provided access to a secure preparation area where Maya could work without interruption. As she settled into the space with her rifle case and mission planning materials, Maya began the careful analysis that would determine her approach to the most challenging engagement of her career. The reconnaissance team trapped in the cave complex represented more than just 4 people in danger. They were evidence of the trust that senior leadership still placed in Maya's abilities despite the perceptions that had developed around her career choices. The mission was an opportunity to prove that her approach to professional development had been justified, that her isolation and careful preparation had produced capabilities that could make a difference when lives were at stake. Rodriguez joined her in the preparation area, bringing communication equipment and range cards that would support their coordination during the operation. His presence was reassuring, representing the partnership they had developed through months of training, and the mutual trust that made them effective as a team. "This is different from our usual missions," Rodriguez observed as he organized his equipment. The comment was understated but accurate, acknowledging that their previous assignments had involved routine training and relatively low-risk operations. Maya nodded, continuing her preparation without breaking concentration. Different, but not more difficult. Just more important, the distinction was significant. Maya had trained for missions like this throughout her career, but her assignment to forward operating Base Whiskey had limited her exposure to high-stakes operations. The rescue mission would require her to transition from the controlled environment of training to the unpredictable challenges of actual combat, but she felt prepared for the demand. As she cleaned and checked her rifle, Maya reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. The incident during her previous deployment had shaken her confidence and led to questions about her decision-making under pressure. The months of isolation and careful practice had been designed to rebuild that confidence and develop better analytical skills that would prevent similar mistakes. Now she was facing a situation where her skills would be tested under conditions that were even more demanding than her previous experience. The rescue mission involved longer ranges, more complex tactical coordination, and consequences that extended beyond her own professional success or failure. 4 people were depending on her ability to provide accurate fire support in an environment where mistakes could be fatal. The weight of that responsibility was familiar but not overwhelming. Maya had learned to manage pressure through preparation and to channel anxiety into focus that enhanced rather than degraded her performance. The months of solitary practice had taught her to trust her own judgment and to make decisions based on careful analysis rather than emotional reaction. Martinez returned to check on Maya's preparation, bringing updated intelligence about enemy movements in the target area. The information was concerning but not surprising, indicating that hostile forces were conducting organized searches that would complicate the rescue operation. The enemy's systematic approach suggested they understood the importance of preventing the reconnaissance team's extraction. "Are you ready for this?" Martinez asked, her tone carrying genuine concern rather than pro forma inquiry. Maya looked up from her equipment, meeting Martinez's gaze directly. "Yes, ma'am. This is what I trained for." The confidence in her voice surprised Martinez, who had reviewed Maya's personnel file and the evaluations that suggested uncertainty about her current capabilities. The person sitting in front of her seemed different from the description in official reports, more focused and assured than someone struggling with combat-related stress. "Good," Martinez said, "because these people are counting on you to bring them home." The rescue operation would launch in 4 hours, allowing time for final preparations and coordination with the ground rescue force. Maya used the remaining time to study the terrain in detail, identifying potential positions and calculating ranges that would support the various phases of the operation. The work was methodical and thorough, reflecting the approach she had developed during her time at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. Rodriguez observed her preparation with growing respect for the level of detail she brought to mission planning. His previous experience with snipers had involved personnel who relied more on instinct and improvisation, but Maya's approach was distinctly analytical, based on careful consideration of multiple factors that could affect the operation's success. "You really think about everything, don't you?" Rodriguez commented as Maya finished her range calculations. "I try to," Maya replied. "The more you think about ahead of time, the less you have to figure out under pressure." The philosophy reflected Maya's evolution as a professional, from someone who had relied primarily on technical skills to someone who understood the importance of preparation and analysis in achieving consistent results. The change had been painful and sometimes isolating, but it had also made her more effective as an operator. As the preparation phase concluded and the rescue operation moved toward execution, Maya felt the familiar transition from analytical thinking to operational focus. The questions and uncertainties of planning gave way to the clarity that came with committed action. She had done everything possible to prepare for the mission's challenges, and now success would depend on her ability to execute under pressure. The reconnaissance team trapped in the mountains was waiting for rescue. Depending on her skills and the coordination of personnel they had never met. The mission represented everything Maya had worked toward during her months of isolation and careful development. It was time to discover whether her approach to rebuilding confidence and capability had achieved its intended goals. Martinez approached one final time before the operation launched, carrying communication equipment that would allow Maya to coordinate directly with the ground rescue force. "Remember," she said, "these people have been holding position for 2 days under constant threat. They're counting on us to get this right." Maya accepted the communication equipment and secured it with her other gear. "We'll get them out," she said, and meant it. The helicopter that would transport the rescue force to the target area was already warming up on the landing pad, its rotors beginning the slow rotation that would build to takeoff power. Maya and Rodriguez gathered their equipment and joined the other team members, moving with the purposeful efficiency that characterized special operations personnel preparing for dangerous missions. As the aircraft lifted off and turned toward the mountains where 4 people waited for rescue, Maya felt the confidence that had grown through months of careful preparation and training. The mission ahead would test everything she had learned, but she was ready for the challenge. The quiet professional she had become through isolation and analysis was about to prove her worth in the most demanding environment of all, the insertion. Helicopter carved through mountain air that grew thinner with each 1,000 feet of elevation, its engines working harder as the aircraft climbed toward the ridgeline that would provide access to the target area. Maya sat in the cargo compartment with her rifle case secured between her knees, watching the landscape change from desert scrub to rocky terrain that offered both concealment and danger. The other members of the rescue team occupied their seats. In professional silence, each focused on their individual responsibilities for the mission ahead. Captain Michael Torres commanded the ground rescue element, a compact force of 8 operators selected for their experience in close-quarters combat and medical training. Torres was a veteran of multiple deployments whose calm demeanor and tactical expertise had earned respect throughout the special operations community. He understood the critical importance of coordination between ground forces and overwatch elements, making him an ideal leader for an operation that required precise timing and communication. The helicopter's crew chief announced their approach to the insertion point, a narrow valley approximately 3 kilometers from the cave complex, where the reconnaissance team had established their defensive position. The distance would require Maya to establish an overwatch position at extreme range, pushing the limits of her equipment and skills while providing fire support for the rescue team's advance through hostile territory. Maya checked her equipment one final time as the aircraft began its descent toward the landing zone. Her rifle was a precision instrument that had been modified and adjusted through months of careful tuning, optimized for the specific requirements of long-range engagement. The scope mounted on the weapon incorporated advanced ballistic computers and environmental sensors that would help compensate for the challenging conditions they would encounter in mountainous terrain. Rodriguez performed his own equipment check, organizing the spotting scope, range-finding equipment, and communication systems that would support their coordination during the operation. His role was critical for accurate engagement at extended range, providing target identification, environmental data, and coordination with ground forces that would ensure Maya's shots achieved maximum effectiveness without endangering friendly personnel. The helicopter touched down in a narrow clearing surrounded by rocky outcroppings that provided natural concealment from enemy observation. The insertion was executed quickly and quietly, with the rescue team and overwatch element disembarking efficiently while the aircraft maintained minimum ground time to avoid detection. Within minutes, the helicopter had departed, leaving the team alone in enemy territory with the mission of extracting 4 isolated personnel. Maya and Rodriguez separated from the main rescue force, moving toward a ridgeline position that would provide observation of the target area and potential engagement zones along the rescue route. The terrain was challenging, requiring careful movement over loose rock and steep slopes that could create noise or cause falls that would compromise their position. The altitude made physical exertion more demanding, adding another variable to the mission's complexity. The overwatch position Maya had selected during her mission planning occupied a natural depression among large boulders that provided both concealment and stable shooting platforms. The location offered excellent fields of fire toward the cave complex and the approaches the rescue team would use. while remaining hidden from enemy positions that might compromise their operation. Rodriguez established the spotting position adjacent to Maya's shooting location, setting up the optical equipment that would provide target identification and environmental monitoring throughout the engagement. The partnership they had developed through months of training allowed them to work together efficiently despite the pressure and unfamiliar environment of actual combat operations. Maya assembled her rifle system and began the process of establishing a precise shooting solution for the target area. The range to the cave complex was 1,847 meters, near the maximum effective distance for her weapon system, but within the capabilities she had developed through extensive practice. The environmental conditions included variable wind patterns created by the mountainous terrain and atmospheric density changes caused by altitude that would affect bullet trajectory. Through her scope, Maya could observe the cave entrance where the reconnaissance team had taken refuge. The position was well chosen from a defensive standpoint, offering protection from direct assault while providing observation of surrounding approaches. However, the same terrain features that protected the team also limited their mobility and created a siege situation that would eventually become untenable. Enemy forces had established positions around the cave complex, creating overlapping fields of fire that would prevent the reconnaissance team from moving to alternative locations. Maya counted at least 15 hostile personnel in visible positions, with additional fighters likely concealed in locations that offered cover from observation. The enemy's systematic approach suggested they were experienced in mountain warfare and understood the tactical advantages of their current positions. Captain Torres initiated contact with Maya through secure radio communication, confirming that the ground rescue force had reached their initial positions and was preparing to begin movement toward the cave complex. The plan called for coordinated action, with Maya providing overwatch fires to suppress enemy positions while the rescue team advanced through covered approaches that would allow them to reach the trapped personnel. Rodriguez identified the first target, an enemy machine gun position that commanded a critical choke point along the rescue route. The gunner was partially concealed behind rocky cover, but his position was predictable based on the tactical requirements of defending against approach from the valley below. Maya adjusted her scope settings for the range and environmental conditions, preparing for an engagement that would announce their presence and initiate the active phase of the rescue operation. "Target confirmed," Rodriguez whispered into his communication equipment. "Range 1,847 meters, wind right to left at 8 miles per hour. No significant elevation change from primary position." Maya settled into her shooting position, controlling her breathing and heart rate while aligning the crosshairs with the target's center mass. The shot would be technically challenging due to the distance and environmental factors, but it was well within the capabilities she had developed through careful training and preparation. More importantly, the engagement would demonstrate whether her months of isolated practice had produced the precision required for life or death situations. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding rock formations followed immediately by the impact of the bullet striking the target at the machine gun position. Through her scope, Maya observed the enemy gunner collapse behind his weapon, eliminating the primary threat to the rescue team's advance along the planned route. "Target neutralized," Rodriguez confirmed, already scanning for additional threats that might require engagement. The effect of Maya's shot was immediate and dramatic. Enemy personnel throughout the area began seeking cover and attempting to identify the source of the incoming fire. Their confusion and defensive reactions created opportunities for the rescue team to advance more rapidly than originally planned, taking advantage of the disruption to move through areas that had previously been covered by enemy observation. Torres acknowledged the successful engagement and began moving his team toward the next phase line, using terrain features and suppressive fire to maintain momentum toward the cave complex. The coordination between ground forces and Overwatch element was functioning as planned, with Maya's precision fires creating tactical advantages that the rescue team could exploit to reach their objective. Rodriguez identified a second target, an enemy commander who was attempting to organize defensive fires and coordinate the response to Maya's shooting. The target was positioned behind substantial cover, requiring a more difficult shot that would test Maya's ability to engage partially concealed personnel at extreme range. Maya adjusted her position slightly to achieve a better angle on the target, accounting for the additional complexity of engaging someone who was aware of the threat and taking evasive action. The shot required patience and precise timing, waiting for the moment when the target would expose himself sufficiently to allow accurate engagement. Target is moving between covered positions, Rodriguez observed. Recommend waiting for better exposure before engaging. Maya maintained her sight picture while tracking the target's movement patterns, looking for the predictable behavior that would create an engagement opportunity. Enemy personnel under stress often developed repetitive movement habits that could be exploited by patient observers who understood human psychology under combat conditions. The target emerged from cover to issue orders to subordinate personnel, providing Maya with the exposure she needed for accurate engagement. The second shot was as precise as the first, eliminating another key enemy leader and further disrupting the defensive coordination that had been preventing the rescue teams. Advance. The loss of leadership began to affect enemy morale and tactical coherence, with individual fighters becoming more focused on personal survival than coordinated defense of their positions. The psychological impact of precision shooting at extreme range created fear and uncertainty that degraded their ability to maintain effective resistance to the rescue operation. Torres reported that his team had reached the outer perimeter of the cave complex and was preparing for the final assault phase that would allow them to link up with the trapped reconnaissance team. The operation was proceeding ahead of schedule, but the most dangerous phase was approaching as the rescue team would be exposed to multiple enemy positions during their final approach to the cave entrance. Maya identified multiple threats that could interfere with the rescue team's movement, prioritizing targets based on their potential to inflict casualties on friendly forces. The engagement sequence would require rapid target transitions and precise shot placement to neutralize threats before they could respond effectively to the rescue team's presence. Rodriguez coordinated the target engagement sequence with Torres, ensuring that Maya's fires would be synchronized with the ground team's movement to minimize the risk of fratricidal incidents. The communication protocols they had rehearsed during training allowed them to maintain coordination despite the complexity and time pressure of the operation. The rescue team initiated their final assault, moving rapidly across open ground toward the cave entrance, while Maya provided overwatch fires against enemy positions that threatened their advance. The engagement was intense but brief, with Maya neutralizing 4 additional targets in rapid succession, while the rescue team reached the cave complex and established contact with the trapped personnel. Captain Jennifer Walsh's voice came over the radio, weak but clear, as she acknowledged contact with the rescue team. Her report indicated that the reconnaissance team had sustained casualties, but remained capable of movement with assistance. The information they had gathered during their mission was intact and ready for extraction along with the personnel. Torres began organizing the extraction movement, preparing to move 4 additional personnel plus casualties through the same hostile territory the rescue team had just traversed. The withdrawal would be more challenging than the approach, as enemy forces would be alert and organized to prevent the successful extraction of the reconnaissance team. Maya maintained her overwatch position, scanning for threats that might interfere with the extraction movement, while Rodriguez coordinated with Torres to establish waypoints and communication protocols for the return journey. The enemy had been disrupted but not eliminated, requiring continued vigilance to ensure the safe movement of all personnel. The extraction began with the rescue team moving in tactical formation that provided security for the wounded reconnaissance team members, while maintaining speed toward the extraction landing zone. Maya tracked their movement through her scope, identifying and engaging threats that emerged from concealment to pursue the withdrawing friendly forces. The running gun battle that developed during the extraction tested Maya's ability to provide accurate fires while tracking multiple moving targets across difficult terrain. The shots were technically demanding, requiring her to account for the movement of both friendly and enemy personnel, while maintaining precision that would neutralize threats without endangering the people she was protecting. Rodriguez's spotting and communication skills proved critical during this phase, providing real-time updates on target locations and friendly positions that allowed Maya to maintain accurate fires despite the complexity of the tactical situation. Their partnership functioned seamlessly under pressure, demonstrating the value of the training and preparation they had conducted together. The extraction team reached the landing zone as the evacuation helicopter approached from the south, timing their arrival to minimize exposure time on the ground. Maya provided covering fires until the aircraft departed with all personnel aboard, ensuring that enemy forces could not interfere with the successful completion of the rescue operation. Only after the helicopter disappeared beyond the ridgeline did Maya and Rodriguez begin their own extraction movement, withdrawing from their overwatch position toward a separate pickup zone where they would be collected by a different aircraft. The separation of extraction routes was a security measure designed to prevent enemy forces from anticipating and interfering with the withdrawal of key personnel. The mission had achieved complete success with all objectives accomplished and all personnel successfully extracted. The reconnaissance team's intelligence would provide valuable information about enemy capabilities and intentions, while the rescue operation had demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated precision fires and ground assault tactics in challenging terrain. As Maya and Rodriguez waited for their extraction helicopter, she reflected on the mission's significance beyond its immediate tactical success. The operation had validated her approach to professional development and proven that her months of careful preparation had produced capabilities that could make the difference between mission success and failure. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's voice came over the radio as their helicopter approached the pickup zone. "Outstanding work, Ghost Sniper. The intelligence that team gathered will save lives, and your precision made their extraction possible." The recognition was professional, rather than personal, but it carried weight that extended far beyond the immediate operation. Maya had proven her capabilities under the most demanding conditions, demonstrating that her choice to focus on skill development rather than career advancement had produced results that no one could question or dismiss. Rodriguez looked at Maya as they loaded their equipment into the extraction helicopter. "That was some of the best shooting I've ever seen," he said. "Those people are alive because of what you did today." Maya nodded, feeling the quiet satisfaction that came from work done well under pressure. The mission had been successful, but more importantly, it had demonstrated that her approach to rebuilding confidence and capability had achieved its intended goals. She was no longer the person who had requested assignment to Forward Operating Base Whiskey, uncertain about her judgment and abilities. The helicopter lifted off from the mountain landing zone and turned toward Firebase Delta, carrying Maya and Rodriguez away from the scene of their most challenging and successful operation. The landscape below held no evidence of the drama that had unfolded in the rocky terrain, but the impact of their actions would resonate through intelligence channels and operational planning for months to come. Back at Firebase Delta, news of the successful rescue operation had already reached senior command levels, generating reports and analyses that would influence future tactical doctrine and training requirements. Maya's performance had been documented and evaluated by personnel who understood the technical difficulty of her achievements and the strategic importance of the intelligence that had been recovered. Colonel Harrison, Maya's base commander from Forward Operating Base Whiskey, received notification of the mission results, along with a detailed assessment of Maya's contribution to the operation's success. The report prompted a reassessment of her previous evaluations and raised questions about the assumptions that had influenced her perceived career trajectory. The recognition that followed was quiet but significant. Maya's techniques were incorporated into advanced training programs. Her equipment modifications were studied for potential fleet-wide adoption, and her approach to mission preparation became a model for other precision shooting specialists. The professional development that had occurred during her isolation was finally receiving the institutional recognition it deserved. Martinez offered Maya opportunities for assignment to higher profile units and positions that would accelerate her career advancement and provide access to more challenging operations. The offers represented validation of her capabilities and acknowledgement that her skills were valued by senior leadership who understood their strategic importance. But Maya's response surprised Martinez and reflected the personal growth that had occurred alongside her professional development. Rather than accepting immediate advancement, Maya requested the opportunity to establish a training program that would teach her methods to other operators while continuing to serve in operational roles that would allow her to refine and develop her capabilities further. The request demonstrated that Maya's goals had evolved beyond personal recognition or career advancement to focus on institutional improvement and the development of other personnel who could apply similar methods in future operations. Her isolation had produced not just technical skills, but wisdom about the balance between individual achievement and collective capability. The program that emerged from Maya's proposal became a model for integrating advanced precision shooting techniques with tactical operations, producing a new generation of operators who understood both the technical and analytical aspects of long-range engagement. Maya's approach to combining careful preparation with operational experience became the foundation for training that improved capabilities throughout the special operations community. Years later, when other operators faced similar challenges in hostile territory, they would apply techniques and methods that originated from Maya's months of isolated practice at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. The quiet professional who had rebuilt her confidence through solitary work had created a legacy that extended far beyond her individual achievements, touching the lives of personnel she would never meet in operations she would never hear about. The coffee that had been brewing in the kitchen at Forward Operating Base Whiskey on the morning when the radio crackled with Martinez's urgent call seemed like a memory from a different life. Maya had evolved from someone seeking to rebuild her confidence into someone whose confidence was unshakable because it was based on demonstrated competence under the most demanding conditions possible. The recognition she received was not the dramatic vindication of Hollywood portrayals, but the quiet acknowledgement of professionals who understood the value of what she had accomplished. Her story became part of the institutional knowledge that guided training and doctrine development, influencing how future generations of military personnel would approach the balance between technology and human judgment. Rodriguez, who had witnessed Maya's transformation from isolated specialist to respected expert, often reflected on the lessons of their partnership. He had learned that true expertise emerged not from dramatic moments, but from the patient accumulation of knowledge and skill that prepared someone to excel when moments of crisis demanded exceptional performance. The mission that began with a radio call requesting Ghost Sniper's services had become a defining moment, not just for Maya, but for everyone who learned from her example. The quiet vigilance that had characterized her approach to professional development had proven its worth in the most demanding test of all, saving lives and demonstrating that some victories were achieved not through noise and drama, but through the steady application of competence and preparation. The debriefing room at Firebase Delta maintained the sterile atmosphere of military efficiency, but the energy within felt different from routine operational reviews. Senior officers filled chairs around the rectangular table, their attention focused on documentation and analysis that would shape tactical doctrine for years to come. Maya sat near the center of the gathering, no longer relegated to peripheral positions or dismissive glances, but occupying space that acknowledged her central role in the mission's success. General Robert Hayes had flown in from regional headquarters, specifically to conduct the debriefing personally, an unusual occurrence that reflected the strategic importance of both the rescue operation and the intelligence that had been recovered. Hayes was a career infantry officer whose understanding of precision shooting had been shaped by decades of experience in multiple theaters of operation. His presence at the debriefing indicated that Maya's performance had attracted attention. At the highest levels of command, the rescued reconnaissance team occupied chairs along one wall, their leader, Captain Jennifer Walsh, displaying the bandages and fatigue that evidenced their ordeal while maintaining the professional bearing that had kept them alive during their isolation. The intelligence they had gathered revealed weapons trafficking networks that threatened regional stability, making their successful extraction a matter of strategic as well as humanitarian importance. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez presented the mission timeline, highlighting the coordination between intelligence analysis, tactical planning, and operational execution that had enabled the rescue team's success. Her presentation emphasized the critical role of long-range precision fires in creating tactical opportunities that allowed ground forces to reach the trapped personnel, despite significant enemy resistance. The Overwatch element engaged 12 separate targets at ranges exceeding 1,800 meters. Martinez reported, her voice carrying the measured tone of professional assessment. Every engagement resulted in successful neutralization with no friendly fire incidents or civilian casualties. The precision and timing of these fires was directly responsible for the rescue team's ability to reach their objective and extract all personnel safely. General Hayes reviewed the ballistic analysis and shooting data that documented Maya's performance during the operation, noting the technical difficulty of engaging multiple targets at extreme range under challenging environmental conditions. The documentation revealed shooting accuracy that exceeded standard requirements by substantial margins, demonstrating capabilities that few personnel in the military could match. Staff Sergeant Chun, Hayes said, addressing Maya directly, "Your performance during this operation represents the standard we should expect from all precision shooting specialists. The question is how we institutionalize this level of capability throughout our forces." The comment was both recognition and challenge, acknowledging Maya's achievement while identifying the broader organizational implications of her success. The military had invested significant resources in developing precision shooting capabilities, but individual excellence needed to be translated into systematic improvement that could benefit larger numbers of personnel. Maya's response reflected the perspective she had developed through her months of isolation and careful analysis at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. "Sir, the capabilities demonstrated during this mission resulted from specific training methods and preparation techniques that can be taught to other operators. The key is providing sufficient time and resources for thorough skill development, rather than rushing personnel through abbreviated programs." Her answer addressed the institutional question, while avoiding the trap of claiming that her success was due to unique individual talents that couldn't be replicated. Maya understood that sustainable improvement required systemic changes rather than dependence on exceptional individuals, making her methods more valuable than her personal achievements. Captain Torres, who had commanded the ground rescue force, contributed his perspective on the coordination between precision fires and tactical movement that had enabled the mission's success. His assessment emphasized the importance of detailed planning and communication protocols that allowed different elements to work together effectively under pressure. The Overwatch element's ability to provide accurate fires while tracking friendly movement through complex terrain was exceptional, Torres reported. This level of coordination requires training and preparation that goes beyond individual shooting skills, to include understanding of tactical movement and communication procedures. The debriefing continued with detailed analysis of equipment performance, communication systems, and tactical procedures that had contributed to the operation's success. Each element was examined for lessons that could improve future operations, and training programs designed to develop similar capabilities in other personnel. Rodriguez presented his analysis of the spotting and communication techniques that had supported Maya's shooting performance, emphasizing the partnership aspects of precision shooting that often received less attention than individual marksmanship skills. His presentation highlighted the systematic approach they had developed through months of training together and its application under operational conditions. The success of long-range precision shooting depends as much on accurate observation and communication as on individual shooting ability, Rodriguez explained. The techniques we developed for target identification, range estimation, and environmental analysis were critical for achieving consistent results under varying conditions. General Hayes took notes throughout the presentations, occasionally asking questions that revealed his understanding of the broader implications for military training and doctrine development. His queries focused on scalability and resource requirements, indicating that he was considering how to implement similar programs across larger segments of the force structure. The intelligence officer who had analyzed the information recovered from the reconnaissance team provided additional context for the mission's strategic importance. The weapons trafficking networks they had identified posed threats that extended beyond the immediate theater of operations, making their successful extraction a matter of international security concern. The intelligence gathered by Captain Walsh's team has already resulted in coordinated operations that have disrupted weapons flows to multiple terrorist organizations, the intelligence officer reported. The strategic value of this information justifies the resources committed to the rescue operation and validates the risks taken to ensure successful extraction. Maya listened to the intelligence assessment while reflecting on the chain of events that had led from her quiet morning coffee routine to participation in an operation with international implications. The seemingly routine assignment to forward operating Base Whiskey had prepared her for challenges she hadn't anticipated, demonstrating how professional development could create opportunities that weren't visible at the time of initial decisions. Colonel Patricia Harrison, Maya's former base commander, had joined the debriefing via secure video conference, participating in discussions about training programs and personnel development that emerged from analysis of the rescue operation. Her perspective on Maya's performance at Forward Operating Base Whiskey provided additional context for understanding the factors that had contributed to mission success. Staff Sergeant Chun's dedication to training and skill development while assigned to our base was notable for its consistency and attention to detail, Harrison reported. Her approach to professional development reflected personal standards that exceeded normal requirements and prepared her for challenges that weren't apparent in our operational environment. The comment represented a significant shift in Harrison's assessment of Maya's performance and career potential, acknowledging that her previous evaluations had failed to recognize the value of Maya's approach to professional development. The successful rescue operation had prompted reassessment of assumptions about optimal career patterns and the relationship between individual initiative and institutional needs. General Hayes announced his decision to establish a new training program based on the methods and techniques that had enabled Maya's success during the rescue operation. The program would combine advanced marksmanship training with tactical coordination and mission planning, creating a comprehensive approach to developing precision shooting capabilities that could be applied across multiple units and operational environments. Staff Sergeant Chun will lead the development of this program, Hayes declared, with promotion to Sergeant First Class and assignment to the Special Operations Training Center. Her experience and proven methods will become the foundation for training that improves capabilities throughout our precision shooting community. The announcement represented recognition that extended beyond personal career advancement to acknowledgement of Maya's contributions to institutional improvement. The training program would allow her methods to influence hundreds of personnel over time, multiplying the impact of her individual achievements through systematic education and skill development. Maya accepted the assignment with the same quiet professionalism that had characterized her approach throughout her career, understanding that the opportunity represented both recognition of past achievements and responsibility for future improvement. The program would require her to translate personal experience into systematic training that could benefit others while continuing to refine and develop her own capabilities. The debriefing concluded with detailed planning for the implementation of the new training program, including resource requirements, staffing needs, and coordination with existing educational institutions. The scope of the effort reflected the military's commitment to institutionalizing the capabilities that Maya had demonstrated during the rescue operation. As the formal session ended and participants dispersed to their various responsibilities, Maya remained in the debriefing room to discuss specific aspects of the program, development with Martinez and other senior personnel who would be involved in its implementation. The conversations were technical and detailed, focusing on curriculum design and training methodologies that would effectively transfer knowledge and skills to new personnel. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez approached Maya privately as the room cleared, carrying documentation that would formalize her new assignment and outline the resources available for program development. Her expression combined professional satisfaction with personal respect for Maya's achievements and the journey that had led to this moment. "You've earned this opportunity," Martinez said, extending the assignment papers. "Your performance during the rescue operation demonstrated capabilities that few people possess. But more importantly, you've shown the ability to develop those capabilities through systematic preparation and training." Maya accepted the documentation while reflecting on the path that had brought her from the isolated coffee routine at Forward Operating Base Whiskey to leadership of a program that would influence training throughout the special operations community. The transformation hadn't occurred through dramatic gestures or confrontational challenges to authority, but through patient dedication to excellence that eventually became impossible to ignore. The new assignment would require Maya to leave operational flying for instructional duties, but it would also provide opportunities to shape how future generations of military personnel approach the integration of individual skills with tactical requirements. Her influence would extend far beyond her personal achievements to touch the lives and careers of personnel she would never meet in operations she would never know about. Rodriguez congratulated Maya on her promotion and new assignment, expressing both pride in their partnership success and recognition of the opportunity she had earned through demonstrated competence. Their collaboration during the rescue operation had proven the value of systematic training and preparation, validating the approach they had developed through months of practice at Forward Operating Base Whiskey. "You're going to change how people think about precision shooting," Rodriguez observed. "The methods we develop together are going to become standard training for the entire community." The comment reflected understanding of the broader implications of Maya's success, recognizing that individual achievement could catalyze institutional change when supported by systematic analysis and effective presentation. Maya's story had become more than personal vindication, evolving into a case study for how dedicated professionals could influence organizational improvement through excellence and persistence. Captain Torres joined the conversation, bringing perspective from the ground force commander who had witnessed Maya's capabilities firsthand during the rescue operation. His assessment emphasized the tactical value of precision shooting when integrated with coordinated planning and communication, highlighting the importance of developing capabilities that supported team effectiveness rather than individual recognition. The coordination between your overwatch fires and our ground movement was flawless, Torres said. That level of integration requires training and preparation that goes beyond individual skills to include understanding of how different elements work together under pressure. The observation reinforced Maya's conviction that the new training program should emphasize systematic approaches to skill development rather than relying on individual talent or improvisation. Her experience had taught her that consistent performance under pressure required thorough preparation and methodical practice that could be taught to others through structured education. General Hayes approached Maya before departing for his return flight to regional headquarters, carrying additional documentation about the training program scope and the resources that would be made available for its development. His final comments reflected both satisfaction with the rescue operation's success and anticipation for the long-term benefits of institutionalizing the capabilities Maya had demonstrated. This program represents more than training improvement, Hayes explained. It's about changing how we think about developing expertise and the relationship between individual excellence and organizational capability. Your methods will influence military education for decades to come. The general's assessment captured the significance of Maya's journey from isolated specialist to institutional change agent, recognizing that her approach to professional development had implications that extended far beyond precision shooting to encompass broader questions about how organizations develop and utilize human capabilities. As Maya prepared to leave Firebase Delta for her new assignment at the Special Operations Training Center, she reflected on the events that had transformed her from someone seeking to rebuild confidence into someone whose confidence was based on demonstrated expertise under the most demanding conditions. The quiet professional who had chosen isolation over career advancement had achieved recognition that no amount of political maneuvering could have produced. The rescue mission that had begun with Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's urgent radio call requesting Ghost Sniper's services had become a catalyst for changes that would influence military training and doctrine for years to come. Maya's patient dedication to excellence had not only saved lives, but had also demonstrated the value of systematic preparation and methodical skill development in an environment that often emphasized rapid results over thorough preparation. The coffee that had been brewing in the kitchen at Forward Operating Base Whiskey, when the radio crackled with Martinez's call, seemed like a memory from a different life, representing a moment of transition between the careful preparation of training and the demanding application of skills under pressure. Maya had learned that true expertise emerged not from dramatic moments, but from the patient accumulation of knowledge and capability that prepared professionals to excel when circumstances demanded exceptional performance. The institutional recognition she had received validated her approach to professional development, while creating opportunities to influence how others would approach similar challenges in the future. The training program she would develop would translate her personal experience into systematic education that could benefit hundreds of personnel over time, multiplying the impact of her individual achievements through institutional change. Rodriguez, who had witnessed Maya's transformation from isolated specialist to respected expert, understood that their partnership had demonstrated the value of systematic preparation and methodical skill development in achieving consistent results under varying conditions. The methods they had developed together would become standard training for precision shooting specialists throughout the military, influencing how future partnerships would develop and operate. Captain Walsh, whose successful extraction had depended on Maya's precision shooting, represented the human impact of professional excellence that extended beyond individual recognition to encompass life and death consequences for people who depended on others' capabilities. Her survival and the intelligence she had gathered would continue to influence operations and save lives long after the immediate rescue mission had been completed. The story that had begun with an underestimated professional working in isolation had evolved into a demonstration of how dedicated individuals could influence institutional change through excellence and persistence. Maya's journey from dismissed specialist to program developer reflected the military's capacity for recognizing and institutionalizing effective methods when they produced results that couldn't be ignored. The quiet victory she had achieved was measured not in personal recognition, but in systemic improvement that would benefit countless personnel in future operations. Her legacy would be found in the lives saved by operators who applied her methods, the missions accomplished through capabilities she had helped develop, and the institutional knowledge that preserved her approach for future generations. The training center where Maya would develop her program represented a new chapter in her career, but also continuation of the same principles that had guided her through isolation and vindication. The systematic approach to skill development that had enabled her success would become the foundation for educating others, ensuring that her methods would survive and evolve beyond her individual contributions. As Maya prepared for her new responsibilities, she carried with her the understanding that professional excellence required not just individual achievement, but also the ability to transfer knowledge and capability to others. The program she would develop would represent the institutionalization of lessons learned through personal experience, creating lasting change that would influence military effectiveness for decades to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.